because writing a book is easy. You can get a book. You can get AI. Supposedly, I saw an ad on Facebook that they can write your book in 4 seconds. Okay.
Yeah. That's going to take that Amazon number and double it to 2-3 million a year.
So I mean, it's on God. I could tell you more. We don't have to go into AI, but it's kind of funny. They can't touch me, but it's funny. It's the I believe that there's a sacred contract that exists between a reader, between an author and their future readers, and it goes something like this: that if you're gonna invest your most valuable resource, your time and your attention, if you're going to invest that in something that I've created, in fact, you're going to remunerate me for that, you're going to pay me for that, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I don't waste your super valuable time. I have an obligation to do that. That's totally the publishing industry in general just has lost sight of that, ignored that. So my first question is always, why do you want to write a book? Because it's never easy. There's always going to be some work. Now, I've built the processes and systems to help people, especially those that don't have the time, where we white glove it, but it's still them. And there's, at the very least, they're going to have to spend, the 2 days and these 2 days they're fun, but they're exhausting. I'm going to take you through a process that you've never been through before. So when I ask someone, why are they writing the book? If they just say, well, I just thought it'd be nice to write a book. Like, yeah, man, you could probably go online and do that in 4 seconds. But if it's important to you to leave a message to one person or to 1 million people, and you do it well, then I think it's worth exploring.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kooler Radio, the broadcast that hosts conversations that can help you craft your life. Each week, we bring on guests who are influencers, coaches, mentors, leaders, and our conversations explore the art of intentional living and crafting life to your dreams. Drop in with us now and get ready to craft your life. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kooler Radio. I'm your host, Matthew Kuehlhorn. Today I'm sitting down with Jim House, the Book Carver. I'm really excited for this conversation. Jim's joining from San Diego. He helps authors create a meaningful book that leaves a mark on the world. Welcome, Jim.
Hey, it's so good to see you, Matt. Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hang out with you. I appreciate your time. I know that for listeners, this is going to be a valuable conversation around some storytelling and creating story. And that falls right in line with this mission of our conversations around Craft Your Life. And to kind of set some framework, Jim, where did you grow up?
So I'm actually from San Diego. I spent most of my life here. And I don't know how deep you want me to go into that. If that's a one-word answer or if that's tell us about your childhood.
Well, give us a little bit as far as, San Diego, and I am trying to imagine growing up in San Diego. You could probably have beach, you could probably be inland. I mean, where were you in the region, and what kind of freedom did you have as a kid? Did you have a full run? Were you out and about exploring away from home? And
I had a great childhood. I grew up about a half an hour from the beach, and starting in junior high, I would take the bus to the beach every day during the summer, and we could take our skim boards. We used to make skim boards before with wood and resin, and make body boards kind of. And so I spent my summer body surfing and crunching volleyballs, and then the rest of the summer, my family had a ranch up in Montana. My mom grew up there, so it was right on the Missouri River. So I spent half the summer in the sun, and then I would get really dark, and my hair would get super blonde, and then I would spend the rest of the time up in Montana on the Missouri River, living just a cool double life.
That's amazing. What I love about this, in the for the listeners, you and I have connected, and we've been in touch, kind of hit and miss, and certainly following on social. And I just get a sense from you that adventure is a big part of your life. And I can see how this is ingrained from childhood.
100%. I get bored easily, and I love the novelty of challenging myself to figure out either a physical challenge or a social challenge, Adventure can be climbing a big peak, skiing off a cliff, or Tony Robbins used to say you can find adventure in a good kiss. So I'm seeking adventure everywhere.
I love that. I want to get into, you're helping authors create a meaningful book, but specifically that leaves a mark on the world. And for folks, if you're not following Jim House, I'm going to encourage you to do so, and we'll get you there, where to go. But you have, adventure is just, this is so good, Jim, because even the folks that you're working with, when you do share little snippets of those that are crafting these books that really are making a mark on the world, like they're phenomenal individuals, and you're putting together some really cool experiences in the crafting of these books, but you're working with some amazing, phenomenal people, of gold medalists, of people that have done some amazing things in their lives and now sharing it in books. How did we get there?
Okay, so that's another question. So a little bit of the background that will kind of flesh that out maybe in a meaningful way is that I'm a former principal of several schools in tough gang neighborhoods, and we were able to raise test scores in schools where that was seemingly impossible. And so in order to, and I actually should have gone back and started with the story, but I'll flesh. Yeah, we can go back to the story if you want to. But I learned some things, some super valuable things about leading people, and about vision, and about planning, and to accomplish really big goals during that time. And then I left to write my own, because I wanted to write my own book. And I set aside 3 years of salary, and I spent, over the course of the next 4 years, 20,000 hours reinventing myself, because I wanted to make sure that the great book in my head didn't become a disappointing book in my hands. And that was my software, right? That's now the motto for the Book Carver, but that's where I came from. And so this was all before self-publishing existed as an option. If you wanted to be an author, a book publisher had to buy your book. You had to get a book deal. So I come at this from a very, all the book factories, the self-publishing companies, none of them existed. AI is putting a lot of them out of business, but none of them existed when I started. So I come at this from there are some criteria that before I take on a new client, that had to be met, and they kind of align with my core values as well. And so when I started working with people, one of the things I say is I'm using my, I said I'll try not to swear on this, but I'll go the opposite way. I use my God-given gifts to help people discover and shape and amplify the positive impact they want to have on the world. So there's an experience, there's an adventure just in the 2 days of planning. And the byproduct of that process is actually a really good book. And so just to bring that to closure is I developed a process accidentally to help other people create really good books, just because I was afraid of screwing up my own book.
Amazing.
And and I'll just say too, it's different than what exists out there, because I'm really invested in having people finish the book. And so that requires just a little bit about this, since we're in this realm, out of all your experience, stories, lessons, wisdoms, etc. And you and I will talk. You and I have actually talked about this. What goes into this particular book, but more importantly, what doesn't, and no one knows how to do that. And frankly, it's because no one really cares. That they're more concerned with you buying the book than actually finishing the book. And there's a lot of special things that have to happen in order to keep a reader in that journey.
Fascinating. I have more questions. Where do I want to start? When you mentioned process, so you alluded to something, and let's see if we can flesh out this a little bit, because when I hear process, I'm like, okay, outlining thoughts, and maybe there's sticky notes going into order. And you mentioned God-given talent to extract and make this discernment of what goes in and what goes out. What is it that is the sauce? What does Jim House bring that's within you, that's in your essence, that isn't just an outline and a ABC process?
It's a really insightful question, Matt, and it's, and I have to kind of brag a little bit, but at least speak to my strengths, honestly.
Yeah.
And the process I've developed is unique and unlike anything. And for the probably at least next couple of years, people still be able to work with me in person. When I'm with people, one of my gifts is helping them to feel seen. And I work with men and women, celebrities, athletes, people who just want to create a really good book. And I get the feedback frequently that they feel safe with me. And because of that, part of this will elucidate a bit of the secret sauce is that psychologists tell us that 90 to 95% of the thoughts we have every day are the same thoughts, repetitive thoughts. They call that the familiar brain. We're kind of on this treadmill of thinking. And so if you create a book from that space, you get a familiar book. If you want a great book, so when I'm spending 2 days together, a good part of that first day, I've developed this very unique process to take them to a place where now we can access the great content to figure out what goes in. And it's they end up, they don't even expect it. They're like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? And so it's really and because they feel safe, because they're willing to go to the deeper place and perhaps they have with their own story and with their content, some magic often happens in that process. Because people have been asking me for years to create a digital product where people could just do my and I eventually will do that, probably because it just makes sense business wise. But for now, what juices me is people, if they want to work with me, we're either one-on-one or in a small retreat. I'm in the room with them. So because I love that, that's what juices me. Growth is one of my core values, and I want to help people. We're helping them create a good book, but we're also helping them. Part of what I'm doing is helping them become the authority and shape the authority of their own experience. I just got a book in the mail yesterday from a client who wrote a book called, I think, The Privilege Race, I think. And in the acknowledgments, he wrote, mentioned me, and at the end he says, and more than anything, Jim gave me permission or gave me license to write this book. And that's sometimes part of what I'm doing is, it's not just about the content, it's about you and what does this mean going forth? Is this just a book? Or when you hand a book to someone, are you handing them a meaningful piece of yourself that can impact them in a positive way, whether you're in the room or not? So
what I'm hearing is you're a facilitator and holding space for vulnerability.
That's definitely a part of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Where does that skill set come from, or skill, interest, curiosity of that come from?
It's a good question. And I think probably I don't really have, I've done a ton of inner work, and the story I could have shared with you would kind of reveal that, but feeling seen is really important to me. And that, to a certain degree, was part of my wound of not feeling seen. And I think that the work has revealed that I was the one that hid myself. It wasn't that others weren't seeing me for lots of reasons. And so it's become my whole life. I view, I'd really like to do something grand in the world and leave a legacy of, wow, he left a dent. I like it to be big, but what I've embraced is really my legacy is one conversation at a time. It's every conversation, whether we're in the grocery store line, at Starbucks, whatever. I think every moment is an opportunity to connect with a human being. And, we have a mutual friend, Jesse Itzler. One time he asked me at his house in Connecticut, he said, Jim, how do you want to be remembered? If you were to put 5 or 6 words on your gravestone, what would that be? And for me, what came up was he inspired others to love extravagantly. And all of my interactions are subconsciously or consciously trying to lean towards that. That's what juices me.
Hey everybody, this is Luke from Kooler Garage Doors. Just want to take a quick second to talk about our sponsor, Sommer Garage Door Openers. In our opinion, Sommers are the highest quality product on the market today. We recommend them for all of our residential garage door installs because of the variety of features they include, such as Wi-Fi connectivity and safety features such as a fixed chain, which moves along a secure rail to ensure your garage door opens quietly and safely. Click on the link in the description to learn more about Sommer Garage Door Openers.
I love that. As somebody who's also done an immense amount of inner work, the paradox in what you were just sharing is in leaving a dent, because I resonate with that. It can be done in these micro conversations that could set a ripple forward that we're almost not potentially even aware of.
And my ego took a long time to come to grips with that.
It's amazing.
Now there may still be a big thing, but it's like, that's not why I'm here. That may be in addition to all the little ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the definition of a big thing is relative, right?
True that. Absolutely.
Do you think everybody has a book?
So it's a good question. It's one of the most frequent questions I get asked. 8 out of 10 Americans say they want to write a book someday. Very few do.
Yeah.
And it's a whole different world now. I mean, you used to have a contract to get. Now there's 1.4 million new books published on Amazon every year. It's insane.
Oh my gosh.
So does everybody have a book? It's yes. I would say everybody has a book, because also you need to think about what is a book. But just like my gift to the world might be some big profound movement or something, or it might be just these little micro conversations, interactions. The book that's in all of us could fall into that similar comparison. Maybe it's a book with a story and a message meant for millions. Maybe it's just meant for 100 people to read. Or maybe even one person. I had one parent write a book for their kids. So yes, the first question I always ask someone, because writing a book is easy. You can get a book. You can get AI. Supposedly, I saw an ad on Facebook that they can write your book in 4 seconds. Okay.
Yeah. That's going to take that Amazon number and double it to 2-3 million a year.
So I mean, it's on God. I could tell you more. We don't have to go into AI, but it's kind of funny. They can't touch me, but it's funny. It's the I believe that there's a sacred contract that exists between a reader, between an author and their future readers, and it goes something like this: that if you're gonna invest your most valuable resource, your time and your attention, if you're going to invest that in something that I've created, in fact, you're going to remunerate me for that, you're going to pay me for that, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I don't waste your super valuable time. I have an obligation to do that. That's totally the publishing industry in general just has lost sight of that, ignored that. So my first question is always, why do you want to write a book? Because it's never easy. There's always going to be some work. Now, I've built the processes and systems to help people, especially those that don't have the time, where we white glove it, but it's still them. And there's, at the very least, I got to spend, the 2 days and these 2 days they're fun, but they're exhausting. I'm going to take you through a process that you've never been through before. So when I ask someone, why are they writing the book? If they just say, well, I just thought it'd be nice to write a book. Like, yeah, man, you could probably go online and do that in 4 seconds. But if it's important to you to leave a message to one person or to 1 million people, and you do it well, then I think it's worth exploring.
So that'd probably be a great place to start if somebody has interest that's listening, is like, oh, I've always thought about writing XYZ or whatever. You would point them to really dig into the why.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a deep one. It could be, I've always, my whole life, I've wanted to write a book that would be beloved, or that, it could be that, because sometimes our desires, we don't really know where they come from, but they're real. Or it could be that I really want to, position myself, as an expert in my industry, but I don't want it to just be a book as a business card. I want people to, after read my book, they're like, where's his phone number? I need to call this guy right now. Like most people who create that book as a business card, I often, I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast before, but, people will say, most people won't read a book. And so, most books are not finished. And I would posit that that's because they're crap. They're not worth, there's so many, or at least they're crap at some point, and then the reader closes the book forever. You can't afford any glitches in the journey, or that book, and the research shows us that book closes forever. So if someone has a really good business and they decide, I need a book, and they do a mediocre job, what they don't know is, and sometimes that will bring them business. Sometimes that's a lead magnet in a funnel, and that gets them some business. Here's the thing, that what they'll never know is that maybe their ideal client, or their ideal partner, or their ideal investor was just about ready to pick up the phone and say, hey, I really like you. Let's do this. Let's do this deal. Let's do this business. Let's create this company, whatever the big thing. And they said, well, just to finish my due diligence, I'm going to read his or her book. And they read it and they go, oh, that's not what I thought they were. And then they never get the call, right? So my clients tend to believe that a mediocre book can hurt you more than having no book at all. And there's plenty of ways to create a mediocre book. Yeah. And I'm not saying everybody, that's okay for some people. Some people just want to write a book and check it, box checked. That's fine. Yeah. They don't need to invest all that money in me to do it well. If it's just like, I'm going to go see a national park.
Yeah, right. Teach their own. What I heard a crazy stat. I don't know if you would fact check this or if it really matters, but out of the books authored, the majority of authors don't sell more than 200 books.
Yeah, I think it's for now, if you count all of them, it's even less than that. It's way less than that if you count in all of those books. And that's a statistic that can be good or bad. And so it just requires a little bit of looking into it, because if you go back to why are you writing this book, and let's say you're writing it just so that you can, you have let's take it on the business side. You want to acquire this new client, but they need to know that you are the expert in this. And so I haven't done this, but I've heard of people who have written a book just to acquire one. They did a really good job on the book so that they saw a need in a company, positioned themselves as the authority, created a really good book around that, and then got the job. So that book may have been given to them. So it's potentially, it's not really about the book sales where people make money. It's about what the book enables you to do. So the book can get you on bigger stages. It can position you as an authority. If you have a movement or a cause that's important to you, you can proliferate that at a wider scale. So there's a lot. That's where all the benefits come from. And when you do it well, I think you don't have book shame. And when every time someone talks about your book or you hand it to them, you just have this immense feeling of pride. Like this is my best work. I'm giving it to them, or it's a really good effort, really, really good effort. It's not like, oh, I hope they, which is, I can't tell you how many people I talked to who said, I already wrote a book, but that was just my book as a business card. And I think, well, that's fine, but it's the right book at the right time.
Yeah.
Did I answer
going
the
through
question?
Your process? You did.
Okay.
If somebody engages with you, goes through your process, is that transformational? Is that a transformational experience?
It is for many. Lots of people have said that, and it's partly like you mentioned, the space that we create and then the process.
Yeah. And I'm curious about that. Like on what levels, like where I'm going, Jim, is extracting, potential value. So I would imagine that an experience like this being transformational is going to uncover the story that may otherwise not be uncovered and shared. And the sacred agreement between an author and a reader, like that's valuable. In taking people through these experiences over and over again, what might be the one or two things that are kind of consistent in this that can also apply into just being intentional and identifying what we want in life and going to craft that?
So there's a couple things there. I would say the easiest low-hanging fruit is that I'll do two. Remind me, I'll do this. I'll talk about the plan the second time. The first one is, though, that when I'm guiding people through this process, one of the most important things I do is managing their energetic state, theirs and mine. And so when I was growing up as an athlete, and I used to think that the body was just kind of this physical contraption that was designed to take the brain all around. I didn't realize there was just such an integrated connection between mind and body. It's like one thing, right? So if you want to access the brain and you do it without bringing in the body as well, you do it at risk of leaving a lot on the table. So one of the things that before you do any kind of creation, and this, especially content creation, but this could work with going on a date, having an important conversation with your kids, is just the consciousness, that the awareness that I have the ability to change my state at any time, and the state that I'm in will dramatically influence the results I get in whatever I'm doing. So during the process, I'm leading them through some activities that my mentors have taught me in different realms, that so that when we get down and start to writing or thinking or questioning, or they're on fire. They can walk through a brick wall.
That.
And so and you could, if you're writing a blog post for your business, or you're writing some ad copy, or you're going to go home and have an anniversary dinner with your wife, whatever, or your husband, the possibilities. I mean, we just, and how often, even when you introduce yourself to someone, I don't mean energy is such a powerful, ignored, easily accessible resource for us. So,
yes. Do you have a favorite tactic for sparking that state, for getting into?
So for me, it's generally breath work. There are some that I used to, in the parenting book that I wrote, there are some that I teach to lead kids through, but there are things that when I was, during those 20,000 hours, this is before there were a lot of coffee shops, this is a long time ago, I would go into the bathroom. This is before standing desk. If I wanted to write at a standing desk, I would put some napkins on the table, put a chair on the table in the coffee shop, and put my laptop on. So I would sometimes, if I'm writing for 15 hours a day, I would go to the bathroom and do some exaggerated. There's so many breath work styles out there, and they all. There's one specific one that I do, but I think they all will work valuably. The Wim Hof is. And I would do even something different than Wim Hof on this. I want something that's going to be super oxygenating. Is so more like the Navy SEAL breathing, or the square breathing, or something like that. Something that's, and a Google search will reveal hundreds of breathwork styles. But the nice thing about the breath is I can be sitting at a meeting across the table, and I can influence my breath, and no one will know it. I don't have to do anything different. Sometimes there are times when I'll do some radical breathing in a coffee shop. Just like I need to finish this right now, or and then one of the things one of my mentors taught me is for being present. There's lots of different techniques for that, but just I wiggle if I'm in a conversation, I find my mind's, I really want to pay attention to this person. I wiggle my toes in my shoe against the ground, and that just forces me to pay attention to a different part of my body. It pulls me out of my brain, allows me to be more present. So,
yeah, love that. I love that. Okay, I'm going to loop you back. You mentioned the plan. You said one of two.
Yeah.
First one, state, plan.
So at the root of what I do is a good book plan. That's what makes me different than everybody else, is that if you want the reader to end up here and you're starting here, you have to create a very specific journey so the reader lands where you specifically want them to, and not hope they get there. And so the plan is there. So we're spending 2 full days just planning the book. That's, we're not writing a book in a weekend. We're just planning a book in 2 days.
Okay.
And what I found, the times in my life when I exercise that same level of intentionality of planning any area of my life, I also, and it's easy for me, like, to do a year plan and then forget about it for 6 months or 3 months, and so the times when I have planning, and I'm going to add one more thing. So planning is life is accidental if I'm not planning, right? So
yes.
So the last one would be about, I think in terms of riches of life, is an awareness of story. Now, we can learn to tell our stories really well, but short of that, what's much easier to do is become aware of the stories in our life. And I teach something called story mining, and I have clients, while we're working together, pull up stories from their past, because there's so many stories that we're awake for how many 15 hours a day, and we 24 or 360. So there's a lot of stories we live in the course of our lives, and most of it we just don't pay any attention to. But there's also a lot of great. Every year there's probably great stories. Every year of our life, stories worth telling. But we think of only a handful of 3 or 4 or 5 stories that we tell over and over again, and we have a whole lifetime of stories. So I keep a notes app on my phone. Whenever I think of a story, I just write it down. Just a title. I'll make up a title. Skied off cliffs. Boom. I ended up in the hospital. I don't have to write the whole story. It's just to become aware of the stories from your past.
Yeah.
And as you do that, and like I will say, what are a fun thing? What are some most embarrassing stories from your life, any age? And so I'll give them prompts, and then they can just mine their memories. And as you find one memory, the way this brain stores memories, it will remind you. Like if I was to ask you, I don't know if you remember, do you remember what, I'll put you on the spot here. Do you remember what you had for lunch in elementary school?
Yeah, the thing that comes up is the cafeteria pizza.
Okay. Cafeteria pizza. All right. Was that?
Yeah.
All right. The square ones? The
square ones, plastic tray.
Yeah, exactly. Do you remember
chocolate milk?
Do you remember who you sat with at lunch? That's a long
Not
time
exactly.
ago. Okay. But
probably some band camp members.
All right. Okay. So if you remember, so if you were to dig into that, you could probably think of some friends, or maybe a worker in the cafeteria, or a teacher that might remind you of a teacher who had a profound impact, good or bad, that you had forgotten.
Yeah.
Because that just opened up that like digging a new mine for stories.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what that does is it develops the muscle for paying attention to the stories as they happen to us in real life. And as you become more aware of story, and I'll tell you one, if you want to influence someone with your stories, practice how you tell it. Usually the way we tell stories, Matt, is we think of something, we would tell someone about it, and we, to the best of our ability, we recall it in chronological order, and that just kind of anchors it in. And for the rest of our life, we tell that story in that way, which may or may not, probably not the best way to tell it. So if you have some really good stories that you want to tell from now on, spend a little bit of time thinking, what's the best way to shape this story? You know, what are some details that I could leave out? What's some, storytelling is, even if you had just one story that you spend a little bit of time shaping, crafting. I know you're into crafting lives, craft a story. And the more you do that, you'll find as you tell stories, your brain will automatically make shifts as well. Like, oh, let me highlight this. So there's that. I think that just makes the whole life experience more rich for us and for those around us.
Jim, I love so much that just bubbled up, and I'll do a little summary, but this will be a conversation that I'll carry with me all day because there's just real gold in it. You know, I love the intentionality of it. I love the fact that you've done deep work. I've done deep work. I've seen how I can go back and I can be intentional and reshift old stories. And there's so much of healing power in that, of
Very
taking
much
this
so.
certain experience and being like, actually, that might have been my version from my 8-year-old self. And now that I'm 47, like, come on, we can start tweaking it. So I love the intentionality, the planning, and then thinking again, when you're talking about influencing people with your story, again, there's another level of, well, why am I telling this in the first place?
Absolutely.
And now I can start emitting some details that may not drive to that intent.
Very good.
Beautiful stuff, man. Beautiful stuff. For those listening that want to reach out, engage, follow you, check in on your adventures, consult with you, how do we get in touch with you?
So the easiest way, I'm not a wizard on social media. I actually am.
You're not bad though.
I'm blessed that all of my business comes to me word of mouth, and so I've hired some folks this year. I actually will start doing marketing. I've been blessed
But
on Instagram, I'm at the Book Carver, like carving a statue. The Book Carver is Instagram. I'm findable on Facebook, and the website is just thebookcarver.com. And if someone is interested in contacting me, they can always do that through the website too.
Yes. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Always a pleasure.
Good questions, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Until next time, and I would encourage any reader or any listener actually to reach out to you. Follow you on your posts. You mentioned you're not that great of a marketer, but what I do love about it, just as a plug, is your questions. Like your intentional prompts. They always catch me, and I'm like, thanks, Jim. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the convo today.
Likewise. Have a great day, Matt. Bye for now.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the Kooler Lifestyle Podcast. We count on your subscriptions, your likes, your shares, and I encourage you to do that now. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, lower right-hand button. If you're on audio, download this, share it, and we look forward to having you on the next one.